Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne here with you on this Monday, and we got a lot to talk about. Sidelines here with you as we are every day, about 50 hours a month of content we put out covering the SEC, ACC, AAC, lots of conferences. That's what we do. College sports, that's our thing. Football, basketball, baseball. We cover recruiting, cover what goes on the field and off the field. Hey, follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Okay. We got a great lineup for you today. Ben Troupe, ESPN Coastal over in Savannah, where the heat and humidity is probably maybe about the same as it is up here in Memphis. We'll also be joined in the second segment this morning by Vince Ferrara over in Knoxville, covers the Tennessee Vols, has worked with Jimmy Himes a long time, March 31st, but hopefully he'll still be active in media and covering the Vols in the SEC because he is such a treasure trove of information and knowledge, okay? Second hour, we'll be joined by Franz GatorBetMedia.com, daily thoughts, pithy thoughts, the national big picture in college sports. We'll hit that as well. And Jake Wimberly in the fourth segment checks in from ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive down in Jackson, Mississippi, the capital city, the bold new city. He's always got a lot to say about what's happening with Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and everything in the great state of Mississippi. Ben, good morning. Saw some stuff last night. I was reading a lot happening, and I want to get right to it. You're over there in SEC country, but you've got a lot of ACC ties and all. This week, Wednesday through Saturday in Amelia Island. What a terrible place to have a meeting for the ACC, just a terrible place. I can't imagine. Why don't they ever go to Olathe, Kansas, or Minot, North Dakota in January for these kind of meetings? But they go to Amelia Island. Maybe they'll see Thurston Howell and Lovey there from Gilligan's Island. But anyway, they're going to get together, and I understand that the chancellors and the presidents are all going to have their own separate gathering. Dabo Sweeney said he's not going to the meeting, but a lot's on the table. Grant of rights. I'm hearing a lot, and you are too, that Florida State and Clemson are saying, hey, we're carrying a lot of the revenue share. We want a better deal. And now North Carolina's chiming in about basketball. And there is a story that I read last night, 24/7 Sports, about the $500 million cost for a school if they were to try to get out of that grant of rights. Every other contract is renegotiated. Ben, I want your opinion on why the ACC basically has forced all of its members to become indentured servants to this contract. And they're getting right now $20 million less than the SEC and the ACC, and that's about to change for those other schools in a big way.
The thing that the ACC did that a lot of people ain't talking about enough, Rob, is the contract that they signed as far as like these TV rights, it's so far fetched. It's like the NFL CBA. Like these contracts that go 5, 10, 15. The world changes every 3 years now. You got a contract that goes well into the 2030s. And you mentioned the Clemson. People saying, hey man, you think Dabo Sweeney would have not gone to these meetings had he not been a 2-time national champion? No, he's going. But because he know I'm the only ACC coach that has a national championship, I'm not going to go. Florida State is still one of the premier programs in the ACC. When you talk about it's called like visibility and notoriety and tradition. And North Carolina just happened to be the flagship university in North Carolina. So, yes, when you think about all the teams in the ACC, what does it mean for teams like Wake Forest? What does it mean for teams like Boston College and Duke that yes, they're in the ACC, but this is what the ACC ain't talking about. How about you make Notre Dame say they in the ACC in football? Because they have to play every other sport. They have to play in the ACC schedule. Notre Dame rolls to the beat of their own drum. That is the key, because what they're not saying is Clemson and Florida State, not only do they holding water for the rest of the conference,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at what's going on in the SEC. Forget the numbers and the money. Man, Vanderbilt is going to get $50-something million because they're in the SEC, right? They're not going to win the SEC East, but I think what happened was when you talk about realignment, when it happened with, different coaches and different teams going to different places, everybody was saying, hey, if there were teams in the ACC, who would it be? We always said Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina. Why? Clemson because they're the flagship school right now as far as like the ACC front runner.
Yeah.
Florida State because, Florida State is a big brand, and UNC because they're the flagship university in that state. It's going to be a lot to be discussed. I just think that the ACC shouldn't allow Dabo to not show up. They should make him show up because I don't get that. It's like, oh, I'm not going to show up. He's not showing up because of who he is and what he's done, not because of where he coaches. Because if this is Dabo Swinney at a Boston college and they're still scratching the car, he's one of the first guys getting off the plane. So when people talk about leverage, you don't think the Kirby Smarts, the Nick Sabans, the Dabo Swinneys of the world don't think they got leverage. Why is he he's probably going to be the only coach not show up. I bet you Mike Norvell's going to be there. I bet you Mario Cristobal is going to be there. So all these other coaches got to show up. Big bad Dabo, I don't care what his excuse is. It's an excuse. It's why the ACC is what it is. And I think what it is too, though, Rob, Clemson, you see how fast they go from the top of the hill to we're not even talking about them, right? They were penciled in as college football playoff contender. Now not so much. We'll see because the ACC is that they real similar to the Big 12 because they're losing Texas and Oklahoma. It could be because if I'm not mistaken, I think the Big 10 reached out to Notre Dame. Notre Dame was like, no. Notre Dame that's going to want when the ball drops from them. We'll see what happens, but the ACC right now, if Clemson can't maintain its dominance and you're trying to figure out who's going to be that tier 2 team, could it be North Carolina, could it be Florida State? I think they might be going through a reputation problem more than the fact that they're trying to figure out how to divvy up these dollars. Because if you think the ACC you think these TV rights are going to let you renegotiate without some penalties?
Yeah.
Oh, you're still mistaken.
Yeah. And back to what you're saying, Dabo, why is he not going? And Norvell and Mario Cristobal, these other coaches will be there. Clemson, it's amazing, Ben. You can win a national championship, and a couple of years later, you're not even in the conversation. I mean, you see this happen a lot with schools, and 2 or 3 years later, the coach is fired. Because really, once you go to the top, anything less than that or right close to it, your fan base is going to be disappointed. And contrary to what people want to believe or think, fans own college football. You know that, orangeandbluebloods.com with you and Buddy and Franz and all, but it's true. And the grant of rights, $500 million if you were to pull out of the ACC. And that's not a conference, okay? At least you don't publicly see SEC members going, why do we have Vanderbilt? Or why do we have this go? Don't hear that. Maybe it's because they want the W in there. I mean, and yeah, Vanderbilt beat Florida last year, but that was the first time since 1988. Ben, you were in like second grade when that happened. Okay. And so it's been a while. Okay. As they say in the country, it's been a minute. All right. But the bottom line is a conference only stays together if everybody has common goals. The ACC better watch out. We have Tommy Kane on here a lot from Atlanta. He's fantastic. Played basketball at NC State, has worked with ACC Network and Fox Sports. We have Richmond Weaver, the upstate over in Greenville, covers Clemson, the ACC, and he's working on a documentary for the Southern Conference. They don't want to see that conference crumble. I don't either. I mean, there's a lot of tradition there, but damn, their conference commissioner needs to step up and say, all right, everybody listen up. We're a conference, okay? We're all going to either fight together and win together, or we're all going to die alone. Got to make that call. Al Pacino, Any Given Sunday. Remember that? Where's Al Pacino? He needs to be at Amelia Island. Ben, come on. If you don't have that kind of leadership, your conference is done.
You're right. Greg's this goes back to 2020 when they had the pandemic, when everybody was saying, what are the conference going to do? The one conference that they did not change up was the SEC. Greg Sankey said, we're going to do this. We're going to listen to the medical professionals. ACC was all over the place. Big 10 all over the place. Big 12 all over the place. Pac-12. And I think what happens is, when you think about the ACC, as you mentioned it, you're going to lose a lot of tradition if you can't keep this thing together. When you think about it, what Duke doesn't bring in football, they bring it in basketball, right? You got so much in North Carolina and things of that nature. It's like, I think the thing about the ACC is they didn't foresee the future in the present. If you think about Greg Sankey, he's out. Like, people go, what do you mean Greg Sankey was thinking about the future in the present? Do you really think the SEC wanted Mizzou and Texas A&M? Or did they really want Oklahoma and Texas? So let me go ahead and get two of your two teams from the Big 12. That way when I come, and the SEC kept going this way. We're talking winning the national championships and how many schools, the SEC having the most players drafted, all these things. Yeah. All of a sudden, Kevin Thomas, the host of 3 Now, he said this. He says, the SEC doesn't recruit. The SEC asks a question. Do you want to be with us? They don't got to recruit you because you can see the product. When people start saying, oh, the SEC got a monopoly when it comes to ESPN and all these programming, that's before Texas and Oklahoma comes over. That's before they come over. So I think the ACC right now is bigger than the fact that Georgia, you got, the ACC, they got Clemson, they got Florida State, they got North Carolina, right? 2 years ago, it was Pitt versus Wake Forest in the ACC championship game. Those aren't blue bloods. That's not a Miami. That's not a Florida State. That's not a Clemson. That's not a North Carolina. So I think right now, Rob, bigger than that is, college football is two things. It's the fans and it's perception. You got to win both. You got to make sure the fans support, and the perception is what people say you are. Meaning, hey, man, people might not know what Nick Saban coach. They know who that's Nick Saban right there. That's the guy that has the Coca-Cola right there in front of him. He never drinks it, but it sits right there in front of him on the but that's branding. And that's the thing. Yes, do I get sick of it? It just means more when it comes to the SEC. I get sick of hearing it, but it works. Yeah. Yesterday they had it just means moms, because it was Mother's Day. Like, they're always on brand. The thing about the ACC, you got a bunch of schools that's out for self that forget, hey man, we got to do this collectively before we can think about individually. Well, Dabo Swinney is letting you know right now it's about the individual. He's thinking about Clemson and Clemson only. But the problem with him is the leverage he had when he had Deshaun and Trevor, it ain't the same. See, now it's Clemson. Good team, not a great team. Good program. Got to see, can it get back to being a great program? But yeah, Rob, I mean, Amelia Island, they saying, look, man, if we're going to have to come in here and yell and scream, at least we're going to have nice views. At least we're going to enjoy ourselves if we got to yell and scream at each other. But that's what those meetings are about, to be able to – sometimes it's to close those doors and say, hey, have we forgotten what we represent? I know the schools, because when you hear chancellors and athletic directors and commissioners, that's a lot of moving parts that got to get on the same beat. And for the ACC right now, they seem to be moving at the beat of their own drum. Problem is, the season is approaching, and outside of a couple of teams in the ACC that got a shot to make some noise, when they go to that 18 playoff, how many teams in the ACC gonna be in that 18 playoff, or 10, or whatever it's gonna be? That's gonna be the barometer. Because you know what Greg Sankey, Commissioner of SEC, is saying? Oh, I already got 5. I'm gonna put 5 in, so I'm still gonna have a monopoly over that. It's gonna be, hey man, we're going to make sure all the P5 conferences get in, but it's still going to look like the SEC tournament when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and, that's the critical part about it. The SEC, you're right. They took Missouri, they took Texas A&M, and that started the bleeding of the Big 12. And then Colorado went to the Pac-12. Nebraska, in basically a shotgun marriage, went to the Big 10 for the money. Now, Nebraska's got a lot of money. If Warren Buffett leaves them just a little bit of money, they're going to have more than most people. I mean, the man's worth over $30 billion. I don't know what he's going to do, but I look now at what's going on. Greg Sankey and the SEC were way ahead of the curve, and that's critical. There's almost zero leadership. It's almost a negative. It's so bad in the ACC. I don't want that conference to fall apart. I don't want it to collapse. You need them to be strong. But you got to tell Georgia Tech, y'all have got to get serious. I know you produce a lot of engineers, okay? So does Auburn. So does NC State. So does Florida. Florida is one of only 6 schools in America that has a law school, a medical school, and a college of veterinary medicine. Only 6 schools have that. Okay. Now, if you look at academics, and we always hear about the ACC, it's strong, but there's just as many schools in the SEC that are highly ranked academically. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but look at the numbers. Ben, I want to say something real quick before we go to the break. Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2023. The inductee, Karen Mason Vanson, Carlos Dansby, Roman Harper, Larry Keenan, who played for my Memphis Tigers. God, that guy was awesome. Theo Ratliff, Jackie Sherrill, who will be on the show with us Wednesday morning, Gerald Wallace, and Roddy White. And I texted Roman Harper when I saw that news over the weekend and said, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. That's a great honor. And Coach Sherrill, the same thing. I don't know Carlos Dansby, but damn, I'd love to get him on this show because that's a guy that I have a ton of respect for because when he was in the Super Bowl, he said, hey, he didn't say Auburn. Everybody knows he went to Auburn. He said Woodlawn High School. He's trying to be an example for other people. You know, you're shrinking to make other people around you feel less insecure is wrong. You're rising up makes other people want to be better too. So, man, congratulations to this Hall of Fame class. And also, if you've ever watched the Feinbaum show, remember Phyllis from Mulga. Her funeral is today. Rich from Atlanta, one of the greatest callers ever on Feinbaum, texted me. He's on his way over to Birmingham. There'll be a lot of good people there. I know Larry from Shelby will be there, but I've gotten to know these people over the years. I don't care who you pull for. If your passion's that real and that genuine, that's a good thing. And you know that. And Ben, I love the beads, man. You're a time traveler. Audrey thinks you were born in the 60s. We're going to be right back.
That's what it was. I mean,
we're going to be right back.
That would make me and my mama twins. But you know, if she hear that stuff, she would be like, well, she think. You know, my mom will be 61 this year, but she, as my mama told me, ain't nothing old about her but her clothes, and she knows she look good because she got a mirror and she can see. So.
That's right. Hey, look, I love it. We're going to be right back with Ben Troupe after this quick commercial message.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back with Ben Troupe. And Ben, I'm telling you what, the last few days it's been in the low 90s, 92, 93, humid. And you have watched the soybeans and the cotton, the rice, the milo, the corn go from about like this to just ginormous. It doesn't take that much. Man, everywhere around. I feel like I'm in Ireland. Plus, we've had you live in Savannah. What happens every afternoon between around 5:30 or 6 when it's this hot? Chance of thunderstorms coming off. That's just the way it is. But, man, that Hall of Fame class, That's an awesome ceremony they have. To be inducted, you say there's not very many people that have that honor, but that's just really, really a cool honor. And Ben, let's look around on the SEC at some things. You know, you think about, and you made a good point, and nobody really talks about it. The SEC knew what they were doing when they grabbed Missouri, because people thought Missouri was going to the Big Ten. Now, could you imagine if Nebraska would have come to the SEC? They were still fairly competitive back then. But now that's a disaster. But they've got money, they got everything, but they don't have a lot of recruits right there. But they built that program recruiting nationally. They also had a great walk-on program. Tennessee and Nebraska were a couple of brands that the last 10, 15 years, you'd read articles about how the mighty have fallen. Tennessee's fixing their deal. Is it purely geography versus Nebraska? They're in the Southeast footprint. Nebraska's not. What do you think?
I think with Nebraska, it's these way more accessibility. Going through too many coaches, you go from Mike Frost, now you talk about Matt Rule, and how it is. Rob, the easiest selling point for anything is the product. If the product is what it's supposed to be, I don't have to sell it as hard. Kirby Smart will tell you that at Georgia. He'll say, look, man, I don't know how great of a coach I am. I know what great players are. So it doesn't. My program becomes a great program when I put great players to go out there and run it. Nebraska is one of those teams where, unfortunately, you watch them because they're Nebraska, not because of the product they're putting out there on the field. Matt Rule is there. We'll see what happens. Tennessee, they're going to have to continue on an upward trend because we're not too many years removed from them scratching and clawing to beat Vanderbilt. And we're not too many years removed from that. Now, I did not know, Coach Heupel will come in and do what he's done with that offense coming from UCF, that high-powered offense. But it showed. We talk about it all the time, Rob. It doesn't matter what you got at what school. You got to have a quarterback. You got a quarterback. The same thing goes to the NFL. You got a quarterback. You got a shot to win a lot of games. Tennessee benefits from geography and prestige, meaning all it takes is 1 year to jumpstart that program again. Now, let me say this. Just like when I talk about Miami or the U, or just like when I talk about Florida State and their dominance and Tennessee, they're not going to be what they were. Sometimes we've seen the glory years of a school. Did they have some great moments? Yes. Yeah. Philip Former days, the Peyton Manning days, no, I don't see that coming back because of what's around them. You're not if Tennessee is going to lose out on the schools that recruit outside of them. The best quarterback going to go to Alabama, going to go to Georgia, going to go to LSU, might even go to Florida. Not because people say, well, why would they go to Alabama? Tradition. Why would they go to Georgia? The championships. Why would they go to LSU? The tradition. Anthony Richardson would be a reason why a kid to go to Florida. Dude went 6 and 7, fourth over. So I think for Tennessee, they still benefit. And obviously they had one solid year. But coming from a guy who understands what Florida State just did under Mike Norvell last year, and all those guys that were draft eligible, all of them came back because they want to try to have a shot to win an AC championship. Nebraska, they can't even win their side of the conference, let alone playing in the championship game.
I'm going to start raising my hand and ask you because you are on a roll. Okay, all of the draft eligible guys for Florida State coming back. That is so big to hear that. And look, I watched Mike Norvell the 4 years he was at Memphis. And I've talked to a lot of people like you do, and some of them are coaches, and they're like, look, Mike Norvell reached out to people in the SEC and said, come help us and our staff learn how to be better evaluators of talent, okay? Now, there's a ton of talent in Florida. Max Howell, 25, 30 years ago, used to jokingly say, we need to have an all-star game called the I-10 versus I-20. All the players 50 miles north or south of I-10 and north and south of I-20 have an all-star game and play it in Atlanta or Birmingham or Memphis, whatever. You know how crazy that would be. Now, Vince Ferrara is going to be on with us in just a few minutes. I want you to please stay on if you can. I know you're a professional bowler, and he is a Tennessee guy up in Knoxville, and we're going to get with him and talk about what's going on at Tennessee. And I'm just curious, when Tennessee was rolling under Philip Fulmer, okay, really that started in 92, late 92, when Johnny Majors was in the hospital. He kind of took over the job. At that time, Georgia was, Ray Goff years were 89 to 95. And 96 to 2000 was the Jim Donnan years. South Carolina was kind of a mess. But all that being said, Florida in 1990 was on top of the world with that guy Spurrier. And And it's amazing. Florida won the SEC in 1990. I don't give a damn. They won the SEC. Okay. Now, when that was going on, and they were still rolling, but they were able to go into Georgia and South Carolina and do really, really well. And right now, you got Clemson has won 2 national championships the last 7 years. It's all changed a lot. I see where you're coming from.
No, but that's how it should be, though. That's what I'm saying. The thing, these players, they got so much accessibility now and visibility when it comes to these coaches and programs, and they know they obviously they know they are the product, but they looking at 2 things. What is the school doing, and what is the school, and how many players are the school drafted? That's what they're looking at. Georgia and Alabama had 20 guys drafted respectively in the last draft. That's 20 guys coming from 2 schools. You know, there are schools that won't have 20 guys drafted in 20 years. They got 20 guys drafted this last year, but you're right. It's supposed to be that way. People are judging different things. You talk about a team like Florida, it's going to become, hey man, quarterbacking. What is the school doing? And Mike Norvell, I think you make a great point when you talk about Mike Norvell come over from Memphis. Real similar. Mike Norvell comes from Memphis to Florida State. Billy Neighbor comes from Louisiana to Florida. That's a huge curve. They both can coach. Both of them can coach, right? But the thing about it is expectations through the roof. Yeah. And the reason and Mike Norvell benefited from Willie Taggart. They gave Willie Taggart like a year and a half. They're not going to fire 2 guys in a 3-year span. One, Florida State got the money the other schools got to just be like the reason why Jimbo Fisher left to go Texas A&M because he wanted $8 million. They cannot pay $8 million to Florida State. I don't care I don't care if Dion is the coach. They can't do that. Yeah. But the better the product is on the field, the easier it is to recruit. The easier it is for those alumni like myself to go out there and I'm not helping nobody recruit, but am I retweeting? These recruits are trying to come to these schools. Yeah, because like I said, Rob, people always say, "Hey man, how does Alabama produce the best talent?" No, Alabama has the best talent. It's a talent acquisition business, but they develop better than anybody. And I'll say that their development. Listen, to beat Alabama means you've done Georgia. When they beat Alabama, they're like, "Do you know what we just did?" Yeah. It's not something that happens often, but I do think that because of the parity in college football now, you're going to have more schools, more players going to schools they probably wouldn't have gone to before because they still get to play. Spencer Rattler went from Oklahoma to South Carolina. He could have went anywhere. He went to South Carolina. That's because of the product down there, man. People want to beat the Georgias. They want to beat the Floridas. They want to beat the Alabamas. Now, that don't happen often. Yeah. But when it does happen, that's Tennessee. They still walking around with that goalpost, but they still ain't found that goalpost. They still walking around Knoxville right now with that thing, and rightfully so. Congratulations to them boys.
Well, and you go back, and when you play Alabama, right, it's really kind of miserable because you want to win so bad, and if you're Auburn, you just don't want to lose. You better think about winning and playing the damn game. And unfortunately, whether people want to admit it or not, a lot of the fans are scared. I mean, that's just you cannot win. A scared man has never won a fight. That's just not going to happen. And okay, bottom line, scared man's not going to win a fight, and a team that's scared is going to play tight. That's just how it goes. Let's go back to the draft. I pulled up I know it's after the fact, but Athlon had a draft preview with 200 players listed in there. And, their number 1 quarterback and number 1 player was Bryce Young. They were right. He's 5'10" and an 8th or something like that. Then the number 2 guy was Will Levis. He says, if you were going into a lab, you wanted to build a quarterback, that's the guy, 6'4", 228 pounds. We know he eats bananas with the skin on them. We know that he puts mayonnaise in his coffee, which is gross, okay? Number 3 was C.J. Stroud. Number 4 was Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson's only got 13 starts to his name. So he was drafted. That general manager took a leap of faith. You know that. But they believe in what could be because of all the measurables at the combines and all. And then it's just surrounding yourself with great people, having great mentors. But you look at the draft, and when you were evaluated going into the draft, and Vince Ferrara is going to be on in just a minute, but I got to ask you, how intense and just exhausting is that process? Just all the questions. And I mean, but they're investing in you. I mean, it's like a portfolio manager is looking at a stock at a company at Home Depot or Lowe's or something. You know, should we buy it? Let's look at the revenues and all. Is it like that? I mean, did you feel like, oh my God, when's it going to stop?
Oh yeah, it was. I tell people all the time, it's the best and worst time of your life. Best because you put yourself in a position to be evaluated. Worse because the questions won't stop. They just keep coming.
Yeah.
But when somebody, when I was in New Orleans with Tom Shaw, he told us, he says, why should they buy you? You're selling something, right?
Yeah.
And so now, can you sell yourself through your words? You've already done it through your ability. They get that part. You look the part, right? Can you sound the part? Because Floyd Reese, the general manager who signed me, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
I asked him. I had a chance. He said, Ben, the biggest part of one of the biggest parts of the evaluation process is this: can we trust him when we can't see him? When he's not around us?
Yeah.
And we get a phone call in the middle of the night. What's the bet is going to be you? And because what happens is they go, look. He says the easy way to dictate future habits is current habits. You don't change. You're just going to become more of what you are. The thing was, he says, we went back to Swainsboro and Augusta. We know everything about you. Basically, we're trying to find something about you that will disqualify you. No disqualification. Yeah. And if we can't find something, we'll take something this small and make it this big, because what happens is, right, we just word it differently. Instead of saying, you failed a drug test, we'll say he had a problem with marijuana, because that's a bigger headline. He said, problem is you didn't smoke, you didn't drink, you didn't do any of those things. And the thing about it is he goes, that makes the process easier when we going around the room and we're saying any red flags and it's quiet.
Yeah. Anything
about him as a player, as a teammate? Nope. What does his coaches say about him? Then we said, what did the trainer say about him? What did the athletic director say about him? And everybody, listen, different people with the same mentality when it came to you. And he goes, then it becomes, is this too good to be true? Is this person really like this? And the thing about it is, he said, you let me know we made the right choice when you used to come upstairs to talk to me as man to man, not playing the general manager. And mind you, I'm just being myself. But the thing about it is, Rob, like you said, this is a decision that could either, if you're the general manager, if Rob Browne, the general manager X at organization Y, you are tied to that quarterback.
Yeah.
Especially if you didn't pick the coach. So Rand Carthon, my former teammate who became the first African-American general manager for the Tennessee Titans, drafted Will Levis. He is tied to a second-round draft pick who had a first-round grade on him, who slipped to I don't know why he slipped to the second, but he did. Yeah. They just a year removed from drafting Malik Willis in the second round of 2022.
Yeah. Well, it is incredible to go hear what you're saying about it. We're going to get more into it. Ben, going in with Vince Ferrara over in Knoxville. Vince has been up. You got to remember, Vince has been on the air for 3 hours this morning. And first of all, I want to say thank you so much for taking time to join us on Sidelines. I reached out to Jimmy Himes last week, and Jimmy has been so generous with his time. I remarried. My wife is a VFL, Vol for life. Okay, I'm an Auburn grad. That's been Troupe, Gator All-American, tight end, played in the NFL for 5 years. So we cover SEC, ACC, but we're big on the SEC and the South. But I watched some of your stuff, Vince. You are really good. I've seen you on SEC Network doing softball and everything, and I was like, wow. I mean, how does the sports animal up there? Audrey's cousin, Mark Ham, lives up in Knoxville, and I've got the sports animal app, and I've had it on my phone for years. We'll have Bob Kessling on here from time to time, and the one thing about you is you're not an employee of the university, so you can let her rip and say whatever, but you are really, really good. And I got to tell you, Jimmy Himes, growing up, great writer for the Knoxville Sports, Journal, Sentinel. I just love people who know the history and are passionate. But Ben and I are having a crazy discussion this morning about all this stuff going on with the ACC. Dabo's not going to the spring meeting, grant of rights, TV contracts. And then we were talking about rebuilding the brands of Nebraska and Tennessee, two big-time brands. Y'all are the 9th or 10th winningest football program in college football history. So how's that rebuilding going in your opinion?
Well, I think two things were key in that, and I appreciate all the kind words. It's really nice and a pleasure to be on with both of you guys. But two things were key. One was the hiring of Danny White as athletic director. Yeah. He has reinvigorated the entire athletic department. Now, they had started a little bit of an upward trend in terms of their success in a lot of sports, but now a lot of those Olympic sports have taken it to new heights, and he is getting them resources for them to work with. It's even more of a team camaraderie in terms of the athletic department. They all support each other, and they're all given resources, improved facilities, those kind of things. So that has been one. And then Danny White was the one that hired Josh Heupel. And Josh Heupel is the key to rebuilding that Tennessee brand, as you talked about, in how quickly he's had success with a down roster, with the NCAA cloud looming over them that frankly still has not gone away yet. He's still been able to recruit better than maybe some would have thought. And certainly the on-the-field success has been better than anyone thought. And for them to be number one in last year's first BCS rankings, yeah, nobody saw that coming. We weren't taking phone calls in the offseason about, you watch, Tennessee is going to be number one when the first college football playoff rankings come out. Tennessee is going to be number one. No, even the most optimistic fans weren't thinking that. Now, obviously, they had the disappointment against South Carolina, but they were able to finish it off with the Orange Bowl win. It's just a different place than we've seen for a while. You got to sustain it. It is because we saw some peaks under Butch Jones with 9 wins, but now this feels different. It feels like it's on a much better foundation, and there's not the criticisms that were there with Butch Jones. There weren't the big goofs. Ben knows with Florida, that Florida game in Gainesville where they were up 14 early in the fourth quarter, had a chance to be up 14 in the fourth quarter. If they go for 2, they just kick an extra point and then end up losing by a point. And Butch Jones was crushed for that. Earlier that year against Oklahoma, where they're at the 1-yard line early in that ball game, inside the 1, and Butch Jones decides to kick a field goal instead of going for a touchdown there. That came back to haunt him as Baker Mayfield led a comeback at Oklahoma. So there weren't those real big criticisms of Heupel, and he got the win against Alabama to snap the streak. So everything with the athletic department and the brand starts with football, but the step back from that was the hiring of Danny White. Yeah, and you go back with Tennessee, and we were up there for the Tennessee-Alabama game. Cousin Mark's got 10 season tickets and a massive tailgate right by the guy with the torch in his hand in front of Neyland Stadium. So, no, again, Ben knows this. Maybe he doesn't feel this way as a Florida Gator, but as an Auburn man, you ask any Auburn or Alabama folks, what's the greatest road trip? It's going to Knoxville. It's just something about the banks of the Tennessee River. Now, the passion of those fans, I've always told Tennessee fans, y'all will get it back because you won't let it disappear. From 1936 to 2004, Tennessee was the winningest program in the history of college football. Then that 2005 to 2020, in those 16 years, you had 9 losing seasons in 16 years. That was nuts. And you're right about Butch Jones. He was so close so many times, but he couldn't get over that hump. And Ben, you look at it as a Gator, you probably feel kind of the same way now too, of Florida going, God, we got every resource in the world. You look at the team picture, there's more guys on staff than there are in uniform. It's crazy.
It is. It's wild. It's wild. Even I even want to ask Vince this when you talk about Tennessee. I look at every coach being tied to a certain player. When I think of Dabo Swinney, right, I don't think Trevor Lawrence, right? I think of Deshaun. Deshaun Watson is the reason why he was able to. It's easy to go out there and get a Trevor when he's watching Deshaun. No one saw Hendon Hooker coming over for VT doing this. And I say, man, I was skeptical too. Like, can you do that high pace, real fast offense? They insert a guy like Hendon Hooker. And yes, I'm a Florida guy. I had to take off the orange and blue and say, how did Hendon Hooker not get the notoriety he should? I know he got hurt at the end of the year, but how much has Tennessee thrived with a guy like Hendon Hooker, even though he's moved on to greener pastures, to have a guy to run the offense that well?
Well, he put in the work, and that's a big reason why he got better. He was also coached well in a system that fit what he liked to do in his skill set. And not that he's one-dimensional, but it was an excellent fit because he plays fast. He's able to process information really quick, and he's a leader. And you have to have a guy that takes control, that is an alpha in that position. Football junkie. He knew not only what everybody else was doing with their responsibilities, but he knew what the defense was trying to do to him. I mean, he had such a great intelligence and love for the game, just a gym rat. That's one of the reasons why I think the NFL kind of fell in love with him during the draft process. Now, he didn't go in the first round. I think part of that was just still some injury questions. You know how the NFL, it gets spooked by the medical. But for him to improve his draft stock after such an incredible 2-year run, really the last year was, a Heisman level. He should have been in New York, I think, as a finalist. But he improved his draft process just from going to the combine, to the Senior Bowl, being in all the quarterback huddles and the meetings. I mean, nobody does that. Nobody. A lot of people just skip it and don't go. He was in all the meetings. He was there cheering on other quarterbacks, which a lot of times those guys aren't doing things because they're afraid of somebody else might look better than them. And, I'm not going to throw to receivers that I'm used to and all. Wasn't afraid of any of that. So he just did everything right and is as good a representative for the University of Tennessee. And, you talk about the brand and wanting to have somebody be a face of your program. There's nobody better than him with everything he brought to the table. Clean off the field leader, great family, football family, incredible story where he overcame COVID, got really sick during COVID, didn't know if he was going to play football anymore, was in the hospital wondering, about what his health future was, much less football. Just overcame those adversities and was motivated. And remember, didn't win the starting job 2 years ago. It was actually Joe Milton that was awarded the starting job. Milton got hurt in game 2 against Pittsburgh, couldn't come back in that game, but Hooker was ready to go, finished out that game, never gave up his gig. And then Joe Milton and him worked so well together. I know we'll get to Milton, but I think Hooker not having that, being self-conscious and worrying about Joe Milton over his shoulder, it just shows he is comfortable in who he is. He is confident, and he'll have a chip on his shoulder in a great spot with the Lions, I think.
Yeah, and you talk about Hendon Hooker coming out of Greensboro, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. You'd have thought Justin Fuente would get him. I just think that shows you what a great quarterback mentor and coach Josh Heupel is. And I look at Joe Milton out of Pahokee. He goes to Michigan, gets the starting job, then he loses it at Tennessee. But Hooker, if he doesn't go down at that point, though, in the South Carolina game, it was over. But
yeah,
Hooker was, Bryce Young, I thought, was the best player in college football. The most important player to their team had to be Stetson Bennett IV, and had to be Hendon Hooker, almost in a tie. They're that good.
Yeah, and thank you for realizing that South Carolina game was pretty much decided. I've heard some people say, well, if Hooker doesn't get hurt in the South Carolina game, he wins the Heisman. Game was already lost. I think that would have been held against him already. So, yeah, now who knows following week against Vandy, what everybody else does. But, obviously I think the way it played out was with Caleb Williams was how it would have been regardless. But he was incredibly important, and I think the way the perception of Tennessee has changed because that offense is so unique that they had a guy that could actually could prosper in it, but then stand out as an individual as well. And I think the narrative is just a system, just a tempo, just a system where you put up stats. And Josh Heupel's had great success with all of them, but I think Hendon Hooker was able to show his skill set within that offense as well. And definitely should have been in New York.
Yeah. Ben, you look at the quarterback's position, it is so critical. I mean, you think about Tennessee last year, the job they did, and Hooker's efficiency, and he doesn't make a lot of dumb mistakes and all. Joe Milton in the Clemson game, the sample you got there, they dominated the ACC champions. What does he need to do to work on his game? I mean, you've caught a lot of passes. I mean, and everybody says they're going to use the tight end every year, by the way. They've got to have some respect for your position.
Joe just has to keep on getting better and just play loose, play confident. The thing about, what Vince is talking about, when you think of most quarterbacks have to adjust to the system. They don't have systems that cater to what they do. That's why it's hard for a lot of guys. The thing about high players, if you don't know the quarterback position, I mean, no one does. When you look at his career as a player now, but the thing about Joe Milton is, the reason why you can trust him is no starter wants to lose their job and become a real you have to become a real teammate to Hendon Hooker. Hey, man, give him what he needs. And that's why, he's going to be a good player, for the simple fact that, hey, man, I got hurt. Listen, Hendon Hooker for Tennessee is what Kyle Trask was for Florida. These dudes start gets hurt, they're going to have Heisman Trophy candidate type careers. Joe, unfortunately, we got to deal with Joe this year. I hope he gets a little sick before the Florida game. Just playing. No, I know Joe's going to be just fine because he came from Michigan. He didn't go from a big program to a not big program. He went from big to big. He went from Michigan to Tennessee, so he's not hiding from the spotlight of the competition. And I do agree with what you said too, Vince, about Danny White. Is this people always say when it comes to athletic directors, do they have to work past January? Are their teams still in it? Well, them VOLS, softball, baseball, they don't mind to them. If you got to play them, because I talked to a lot of the baseball guys. I'm just, like I said, I know what Tennessee means to the college football fabric, not just the SEC, and that's what makes it hard. Some of my best friends, Troy Fleming that went to Tennessee, Albert Haynesworth. I don't care what Tennessee is doing. They ain't gonna let you talk trash about them. They're gonna throw that history at you. What? They're gonna go back and replay it with things of that nature. But Tennessee is good for college football, not just the SEC. And like I said, we know who the quote big dog is, no pun intended, in the East. Somebody's got to be viable enough to put pressure on Georgia. I don't know if anybody's ready to beat them, but it's either gonna come from Gainesville or Knoxville. Because like I said, if it's not coming from those two places, people ain't gonna believe. If it's Kentucky, people ain't gonna believe it. If it's South Carolina, people don't think they ain't gonna be able to keep it up. If it's coming from Knoxville or Gainesville, that's national appeal. Plus, like I said, people talking about who the best quarterback coming back in the SEC. You don't hear Joe Milton name enough. That man got an Orange Bowl MVP on his record. That's to me, outside of Daniels up at LSU, Tennessee they're gonna give people some problems next year.
Yeah, let me say this about Joe Milton. A couple things to add with what you were saying, Ben. Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker were BFFs, roommates last season. And don't think that Joe Milton hasn't learned from Hendon Hooker and doing a lot of the things that he did, whether it's, calling guys back in a practice rep. If the coaches are ready to move on, he sees it's not 100% right. He calls him back and said, nope, we're doing it again. He's the first one in, last one out. That was like Hendon Hooker. He's doing things. He knows how successful Hendon Hooker was with his work habits. And a lot of the times, even though he has the strongest arm in college football, nobody raving about Will Levis this past year, the video of him throwing from his knees 60 yards. Nothing compared to Joe Milton. Joe Milton has the strongest arm in college football. Now, the thing with him is the deep ball accuracy. That's what got fans frustrated with him when he had the gig. And even at times where he did fill in for Hendon until he took over the starting job when he got hurt, there was still some of that deep ball accuracy. Got such a big arm, he gets too hyped up and overthrows wide open receivers for touchdowns. Well, he was better in the Vanderbilt game, and then he was much better in the Clemson win in the Orange Bowl, where he was the MVP. So, and then in the spring game, you saw improvement there as well. He is becoming more of the accurate pocket quarterback that makes better decisions on when to run, and he can run. He's a different runner than Hendon Hooker, but he can run. I mean, big body, 6'5", 240, and put together. He is a Anthony Richardson type of athlete with an even better arm, and if he has a great year, he will be Richardson with proven college production and winning. And so he'll be older, so maybe that'll dock him back a little bit. But he has that kind of upside. He hasn't done it as the guy at Tennessee, but it's his third year in the program now, and he knows what they expect. And I think he's got enough weapons around him. This offense is still going to be very, very good. Maybe it's not the Hendon Hooker numbers of last year, but it's still big-time numbers. And I think it's not going to be an issue. They got a 5-star quarterback behind him. So kind of an interesting dynamic. He's not looking over his shoulder to Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback from California. He's helping him, which is what Hendon Hooker did with him. I think it's a perfect setup. And the one thing with Hooker and the difference with Virginia Tech that Rob, you were mentioning earlier with Justin Fuente, what Hooker said is, he gets freedom. He got freedom at Tennessee. Tennessee gave him the freedom to change into any play in their playbook. That's how smart he was. He could do that. Not all quarterbacks can do that. He didn't have that freedom at Virginia Tech. And maybe he developed that when he was at Tennessee, but you saw the best of Hendon Hooker when he could put them in the best play. And a lot of the criticism about the offense for the NFL was, it's a totally different system, and half field reads and wide open receivers. Well, a lot of what he's doing is pre-snap in recognizing the coverages and what they're doing and getting the right mismatches for their receivers. So a lot of the work that quarterbacks do post-snap, because the coaches have these 30-second play calls. Yeah. He's doing a lot of that pre-snap. And that's why he's able to make the right decisions, because it's not always post snap. He's that intelligent. He's just a really special player.
Well, I mean, and we got a break here in a couple of minutes, but I like what you just said too about Joe Milton. I mean, you watch that guy's arm; it's a cannon. How is he on the short and intermediate throws? I mean, and I'm not a coach, I'm not a draft guru, but I know you look at a quarterback like, say, Nick Marshall at Auburn. God, he could throw it a mile, especially if you got a tip from a Georgia player. It really helped. But the short and intermediate passes was a struggle.
It's a great point, and it's actually one of the other things that since he took over for Hendon Hooker, he has shown improvement on, and not throwing the fastball in those crossing routes and those quick inside slants. Sometimes he would gun it and guys can't handle it. So he has been better at that. We'll see though, when it ramps up into when he's the guy and from the jump, and he's got to make those in-game decisions. Florida will be the first big test. I know there's Virginia in Nashville before that, but Florida will be the big, because that's the thing is, when he has missed, whether it's too hard on the short intermediate throws or the deep ball accuracy, is when he gets too ramped up in the moment. Like I said, Clemson game, he passed that test. But what's it going to be like when you're now in the fire as the guy from the jump? So we'll find that out. But that is an area that he has shown improvement on to this point.
All right, Vince, if you can stay with us just a couple more minutes after the break, and I know you got to go. You've been up since early this morning. I want you to come back and a few more questions Ben and I do.
Sure.
Let people know how they can follow you. Rob Browne, Vince Ferrara, Ben Troupe, Sidelines, Monday kickoff, right back after this quick commercial message.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, we are back. Rob Browne, Vince Ferrara, and Ben Troupe, and talking a lot of Tennessee right now. And Vince, I look at Tennessee resource-wise. I mean, again, they don't lack for anything. You got Danny White as an athletic director, fundraising, all that, NIL, we got it. And everybody's dealing with the portal. It's all the same thing. Here's a question I have. A few weeks ago, Tennessee met up in Cincinnati with the NCAA. And what about this thing called the transition team? Ben, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I think the SEC office is involved, and it's, okay, things that they're accused of that are legal now that they're accused of when they weren't supposed to be legal. I'm just going to guess, and I want your thoughts, Vince. I think Tennessee's going to get credit for time served. They got rid of 8 or 9 coaches. And damn it, they got to quit hanging this over their head like the sword of Damocles. I mean, let them go. Let them move on. I'm getting really word well, but God, they've got to move on. And I would think that they've ridded themselves of the bad actors.
Yes, they have. And to your point, they were cooperative from the jump. They got rid of coaches. They welcomed the NCAA onto campus. I mean, who does that? I mean, usually finding reasons to keep them away. That's why people turn in like a whole bunch of secondary violations. So they're like, hey, well, look, we're being honest. You don't have to come snoop around. Sure. But they were very critical of how harsh the violations were by Pruitt and the staff. So they were cooperative throughout. And although you should get rewarded for that, and I think they will in the end, not everybody that is gotten off. Missouri was hit hard after they were cooperative. So in a case in the past. So you just never know. The NCAA, there's never any full precedent that you can go off of. They're so inconsistent. And I think part of this is the NCAA wanting to show that they still have a little bit of teeth. And they're not just going to bow down that anyone can be cooperative and then end up getting what they determine. They want to put their handprints on it, and they just couldn't come to an agreement on what the final penalties would be with that cooperation. So I'm sure they threw around in those meetings. I'm sure they threw around some heftier stuff, and they'll bring it back down. In my opinion, I think they're going to get a couple extra little things, whether it's some recruiting visit limitations. They'll definitely get a fine, and then maybe some scholarships. I don't think it's going to be a harsh penalty, but I would anticipate, since they couldn't come to the agreement and got to that hearing in the first place, that there's probably something else coming. Whatever it is, and I think it was significant that Greg Sankey was there on their behalf. Yeah. He's got, as you guys know, he's got a lot of power and a lot of influence. And so I think that was a positive for Tennessee. And maybe you can look at it as, well, the fact that he was there and taking his time to go there shows you that it was serious business also. There's that flip side of it too. But I think in the end, Tennessee will get a little extra something from the NCAA where they can be happy to have a say in it. Tennessee will be happy to get it done and over with and not have a bunch of extra penalties. They penalized themselves also. That was another factor of it too. Yeah. So I think whatever it is, it's still going to take several weeks before it's decided on. And then if Tennessee gets hit harder, there'll be an appeals. But I think it'll come to a close, before media days, I would think.
Well, I can just say this. Having Greg Sankey there on your behalf is a lot better than having Hamilton Berger, the district attorney. He went up against Perry Mason every day on your behalf. I like it. But look, Vince, listen, I know you have been up since probably 4 o'clock this morning. You do 4, yeah. And I am looking forward to, we got to get you back on again. You are fantastic. Sure. And again, Jimmy Himes has been so critical to the growth of our show, just so kind with his time and all. I want to thank you again for you coming on here. Let people know how they can follow you and all the work that you do. And folks, get that sports app for the sports animal on your phone. If you love the Vols and college sports, it's great stuff all day, every day.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for the kind words. Jimmy is the man. I've done shows with Jimmy. I filled in on their show Sports Talk for 12 plus years until now. I'm the co-host of that show since Jimmy retired. It moved from afternoons to mornings, but I worked with John and Jimmy for many years since 2010. So, and we still will work together. He's covering the SEC spring meetings in Destin with us. Or for us, so he'll come on the show, and then he'll be part of our team at SEC Football Media Days this year in Nashville. He'll be part of our game day coverage. He hosts the golf show, so he didn't go away. He just gets to pick and choose, which he deserves, what he wants to do. But yeah, the app is WNML. Just search for 99.1 The Sports Animal, and there's so much content there on the Vols. We've got a couple of former Vols on our station, Jason Swain and Eric Ainge, that do shows. So it's our website is 991thesportsanimal.com, and you can give me a follow on Twitter. You can see it on the video stream at Vince Sports, VINCE Sports. And then John Wilkerson and I call Tennessee Baseball on the Vol Network. And getting into the postseason, final week of conference play at South Carolina. It's called the series win over Kentucky. And then we'll see. One time I've gotten to go to Omaha, the College World Series with John. And hopefully we can make it a second time this year. But there's a lot of good teams, including in the SEC, that will have a say in that too.
Oh, yeah. Look, we want to get you back on next week because we love college baseball, but it's the first time there's so much football I wanted to do. But I'm a baseball junkie. But look forward to having you on. Have a great week, and thanks again for your time.
Anytime. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
You bet. You're welcome. And I'm going to tell you what, folks, when you get the different folks on from the SEC around the conference, and now I am surrounded. I feel like I just fell off the deck into the swamp, and I'm about to get eaten alive. 2 Gators, Los Gators, Ben Troupe, Franz Beard, along with Frank Duffy, 2 of the world's most interesting men. Smartest men as well. And Ben, you are off the charts, man, with your knowledge and your IQ, not just for football, but on everything we talk about. It's amazing. I've got a bunch of questions that came in here. And Franz, before we go to you, this is one, just a quick answer from Shoney down in Valdosta, Titletown, USA. Ask Ben if the NFL game is as different from college as I think it is. Just a minute or two. And I know Franz has got some thoughts, some final pithy thoughts, some daily thoughts, but I want your take on that real quick, Ben.
It's night and day. You can't even compare the two. The guys you grew up watching, that's who you got to play against. I mean, Aaron Donald is really that good. And the thing about college football is you got a couple of players on each team that can really hurt you. NFL, anybody out there can hurt you. Big name, no name, household name. And the thing about it is you playing people, as I was told, the NFL, you playing against guys that got bills. I'm talking about big ones. I'm talking about children. I'm talking about wives. I'm talking about child support. I'm talking about alimony, and they coming at you. They don't mind paying it. They just want to make sure they get. So it's a different world, man. It really, really is. The NFL is so that a 40-year-old quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the best players in it. And he's older than everybody in it. So, yeah, the terminology is one thing, but grown man, what Ray Lewis, the grown man's game, man, it's not for the weak. You love doing it, but they run fast. They run really fast. They hit hard. No, they hit really hard. So much so that I played against Steve McNair. He broke his sternum because he got hit by John Henderson. I mean, I know my sternum is right below, right below my chest plate. Somebody broke it. That's how hard they hit. You think it's hard to breathe with it? Try breathing without it. So I'm just telling you, it's a different world. Only because the best players in the world play in the NFL. Period. The SEC got some of the best players coming to the league, but the best in the world reside in them 32 teams in the league.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of an answer. Shoney in Valdosta, Georgia. Great question. Franz Beard, good morning. It is Monday, my favorite day of the week, because most people want to sleep in, and they're like, hey, No negative thoughts allowed in our brains. All positive, all high energy, all positive karma. Franz, you are, you know what, Ben? Franz is like Johnny Carson. He's got the wit and the acumen and an IQ off the charts. So I'm going to let Franz roll, man. I'm putting the ball in his hands. But Franz, real quick, ACC, Dabo's not going to the meetings at Amelia Island this week. Grant of rights issues, all this stuff happening. Is the ACC, is it to the point where we're going to have to say, if it's not a good meeting, the respirator's on, the priest is in the room, and they're calling the kinfolk to the bedside to say goodbye? Because they don't look like a conference that's all on the same page.
Well, they aren't on the same page, and they got stuck with a media rights deal that will not pay them as much as $45 million for another 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the SEC is going to distribute a minimum of $73 million per team. That's minimum. But see, that's based on a 14-team league. The contract's going to be renegotiated. It's going to be talked about in Destin, and they're going to agree to it. Texas and Oklahoma will be there for the SEC spring meetings, and they're going to get a new contract. And that new contract is going to probably pay each team. Each team's going to wind up with probably about an $85 to $90 million a year package.
Wow.
Double what the ACC has, close to triple what the Big 12 has. And let's put it this way. We could all go work at a convenience store and make more money than what they're paying out in the Pac-12, which is, now you want to talk about who's on life support. The Pac-12 is on life support. Now, the one thing John Swofford did with the ACC was he made it next to impossible for any team to leave. The penalties are so high, and this will not be like Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12. When Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12, both the SEC and ESPN were more than happy to chip in with that exit fee, which is ransom, any way you want to hold it. You know, it's like we're holding grandma. We're going to shoot her in the head if you don't pay up. You know, It's not like it's not like that. This is, and here's the reason why. Does Clemson add anything to the Southeastern Conference? Do they?
I think you're bringing sand to the beach if you bring Clemson and Florida State in.
What do they bring to the table? Do they bring up? Clemson's won 3 national championships in football in its history, and they've won a bunch of them in soccer. I kick a touchdown. Yay! Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. Who cares? They keep pushing soccer on us. It's great for soccer moms because it gives them something to do. And it's great for little kids because they learn footwork. But, by gosh, what happens to them when they hit 12? They start playing a real sport, Yeah. The fact of the matter is, Florida State, what have they done? Okay, they got a good softball team and a good women's soccer team. They don't move the television needle, either one of them. They don't expand the footprint of the conference, either one of them. We already got South Carolina because the University of South Carolina is in there. We already are into North Carolina because Charlotte is so close, is right there on the border, and we got the Charlotte market. If we were going to move the needle, you'd think about North Carolina and Duke. But here's the deal with that. They don't move the needle, not even for basketball. Everybody says, well, we'll get them for basketball. Yeah, to improve the product in the SEC. But the only 2 schools that move the needle for basketball in the entire country, one of them is Kentucky and the other one is Kansas. You could play Kentucky and Western Walla Walla Junior College and Trade School versus, on a Tuesday night, and it will draw better on TV than the best game just about that ESPN can put on Saturday night for football. That is a fact. The same is true with Kansas. Kansas could play a convent or a homeless shelter on a Wednesday night and would outdraw ESPN, with the exception you may get an Alabama and LSU game or something like that. That will draw big. But you get, let's say, Ole Miss and South Carolina playing on Saturday night. Kansas versus a homeless shelter will outdraw them.
Well, you're right about this. In the basketball, Ben and Franz, go back to 30 plus years ago when Florida State was being courted by the SEC. I can have vivid memories of this. And I argued with people. I said, you're out of your mind. They tried to tell me, the money is so much better in the ACC than coming to the SEC for Florida State because of basketball. Nothing could be further from the truth. That's just not how it works. And Ben, we talk about, I don't want the ACC to fall apart. But you know what? I can't care more than they care. That's just how it is. You just mentioned Florida State and Clemson in football. Miami, you think about when Miami, they want to be the U again. I don't see that happening. Who's going to save the ACC, Ben, based on what Franz just said and what I just asked?
The only one that can say the ACC is the one that rolls to the beat of his own drum, but that's Notre Dame. If you can't make Notre Dame accept the fact that you're in the ACC and every other sport except football, they're the only one they can say. I mean, that's the biggest brand in college football, right? Just branding. It's probably Notre Dame because they do what they want to do, and they know they do. They like, look, we got the regular season. We watch y'all go into championship week. If we get the double-digit wins and one loss, we're in the college football playoff. That's all we got to do. But I don't know if anybody can save the ACC only because you can't have that many irrelevant teams. You got too many of them, meaning North Carolina is relevant, Florida State is relevant, Clemson is relevant, Miami is relevant. You start talking about Duke and Boston College and Wake Forest, people ain't going to tune into that stuff. Even if Wake Forest and Pitt just went to the AC Championship game. If it ain't these big name schools, and I say Notre Dame is the only team that can save it. Georgia Tech can save the ACC. Problem is Georgia Tech can't save itself right now. You got to have big schools and big times. Like the difference in the ACC and the ACC, big cities. Yeah. SEC, small towns. But they got bigger brands. So I don't know who's gonna save the ACC because old Dabo, I know he don't want to be there. With shorts. He don't want to show up to the
hold those thoughts because that's a great point. Big cities versus college towns, which is a better fit. We'll be right back after this.
Grabbing yourself this way. Okay, I'll call you after I get off this radio show and we'll figure out what I'm about to, okay? Love you. Bye.
Hey, get out on this Monday. It's a great day to get your week off to a great start. Go to Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas, about 45 minutes from Memphis, but they can be reached from anywhere on the globe, redriverfordtoyota.com. After the tornado March 31st, they've received a really big increase in inventory, especially on the Toyota trucks and SUVs, but they've got them all, Ford trucks, SUVs, cars. But, man, they've got over 700 previously owned cars, trucks, and SUVs, and they will deliver anywhere. If you're listening, to Sidelines. Right now, Red River Ford Toyota will deliver anywhere. It's a very easy process. Justin Wynn, general manager, Rusty Howard, Greg, the sales managers, the whole crew over there, they're great to deal with. And the service department's open on Saturdays, 7:30 in the morning until 12:30 in the p.m., 6 days a week. Monday through Saturday, they're open 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, service department open Saturday mornings, 7:30 till 12:30. And right across the street is one of my favorite food trucks, the Crazy Donkey. I'll just leave it at that. It's great Mexican food. It's as good as it gets. Let's go back, Ben. Who can save the ACC? They got to save themselves from themselves. Franz?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, the thing about the ACC is you got some big name brands. Problem is, Florida State, they want to be good every now and then. Clemson is the best team in the ACC. Notre Dame will not honor his contract and say we're going to play all ACC schedule. And Mario Cristobal, they trying to do their best Steve Spurrier impression. Only problem is he just went there. I don't know what it is about Miami. They can't make it to bowl games. They talk more trash than they produce on the field. And North Carolina got the best quarterback in the league. So North Carolina got the best quarterback. Clemson got the best team. Miami got the best tradition. And Duke will end up making some noise and no one to care about it. So I just think the ACC is a mess. And Dabo is using, he's throwing this little hissy. He ain't showing up to the meeting. We a long ways away from, bring your own guts. We ain't heard that kind of stuff in a while. Because DJ Uiagalelei, I know he's no longer there in Clemson, but Clemson the best team, Notre Dame the biggest brand, Miami got the best tradition, Florida State had a 9-win season, and Mac Browne got the best quarterback in the whole league.
Yeah. I mean, Franz, he laid it out pretty damn good. Now, you be right now the arbiter of all this, Franz, for us. I don't see – and the ACC doesn't understand this is how I see it. They don't understand how much money you got to invest yourself. You can't just wait around for the conference to give you a check. Your fans have got to be putting $35 or $40 million a year like Clemson does with IPTAY. Does anybody else in the ACC, you think Syracuse or Wake Forest or Boston College are doing that? No.
Well, Florida State is pleading poverty and saying we got to have more money from the league for media rights than everybody else because we're the biggest brand. Well, what is Florida State actually contributing to the brand? That's the real question. And the answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Unless you want their softball team. Well, okay, their softball team's really good. Might win a national championship. Well, not really. Oklahoma will smoke them just like they smoke everybody else. And Oklahoma's coming to the SEC, by the way. Minor little detail there. And gymnastics, they don't have a gymnastics team. Oklahoma's coming to the SEC. Didn't I mention that? No. Okay. And Texas wins in a bunch of other sports. And all of a sudden, the SEC has a perfect storm with 16 teams. They've got the footprint. And it doesn't matter that the Pac-12 is going to disintegrate because the Big Ten +4 +6 now is not, what a dumb name, the Big Ten. Yes, no, 10 what? Here's the thing. They are going to raid for Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and California. And the reason they're going to do that is to negate some of the, not everybody saying, well, they really need this to negate the travel costs for Southern Cal. Southern Cal and UCLA, they don't care about their travel costs. Those guys knew what they were getting into in the first place. What they're doing is trying to create enough games for Southern Cal and UCLA on the West Coast that these East Coast teams don't have to send their intramural Squamish or sperm whale harpooning teams out to California. That's why they're doing that. And what it's going to do is it's going to cause 4 teams, the Southern 4, are going to join the Big 12, which is smart enough to say, we're going to change our name to the Big 16.
Yeah.
Whoa, what a concept. They can let the big dog count. The people up in Georgia need to learn how to spell. It's DOGS, not DAWJS. Give me a break. Come on. Folks, here's the deal. The SEC is primed. You know, I'm listening to a show yesterday on Sirius XM, and they're saying, well, Clemson and Florida State will join the SEC. No, they won't. And Sankey doesn't want them. Sankey's got the footprint. Do you think for 1 second that on a Saturday night, people are going to be saying, well, damn, that Rutgers and California game looks pretty damn good to me?
Ugh.
No, they're not. Or they're going to say, hey, Oklahoma's playing Ole Miss. Whoa, who am I watching? You think I'm watching You think I'm watching Rutgers in California? Do you think I'm watching Northwestern and Stanford? Okay, so they win the SAT Bowl, you know?
Yeah.
So they got more. They will have more guys who will go to med school. Okay, great, wonderful. We need more doctors. But guess what? They're not going to move a football needle at all. And this is what it's all about, guys. You got to move the football needle. Sankey's got 16 teams, a perfect scheduling storm, because now you play 3 permanent teams, and the other 12 teams will be in your stadium at least once every 4 years. You'll be in their stadium at least once every 4 years. It is the perfect scheduling storm. We've never had anything. We've never had a perfect scheduling storm like this before. You know, unless you've got a 10-team league and everybody gets to play everybody just straight out every year. But we're past the 10-team leagues time. Now it's all about the money, and the SEC's got it, and the SEC's got a commissioner that's smart, unlike the other leagues, and things are going to happen. And by the way, I heard the end there, Tennessee is going to get hammered. The NCAA is not going to be lenient on the Vols. They're going to get hammered. This isn't Alabama. This is Tennessee. If it were Alabama, they'd say, well, Nick, you know, can we take away one of your scholarships for your managers? You know, do you mind if we require you to have 2 fewer janitors in the football locker room? Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, and we'll hit you hard on that. And we'll monitor it. They're going to go up to Tennessee and look and say, we want your firstborn male children.
Well, I'll be shocked if they do. I think Tennessee, I think there's a lot to the story of Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, this is my prediction. I think he's going to get most, if not all, of the money that is owed to him. Okay? I really think that's likely. And I think Georgia and Tennessee are doing everything in their power to keep Jeremy Pruitt out of coaching. Because if there weren't that cloud hanging over Jeremy Pruitt's head, Nick Saban, as smart as he is, I think would have hired Jeremy Pruitt back to run his defense. I think Tennessee's going to get more credit than we think for time served. But I think the fact that Greg Sankey was there is saying this is a serious case. But again, that transition team nobody's hearing much about it, but there's something called a transition team. And they're going into these cases where schools have been accused of things before NIL became the law of the land, July 1st of 2021. And I think they're looking at it and going, okay, let's put all this in perspective. I don't know. I think Tennessee, that brand is a powerful brand. Sankey's a powerful man. I think that the fact that they got rid of 9 coaches, I do think, though, they're going to get a fine, a substantial. What did Penn State get for the Jerry Sandusky nightmare?
A whole bunch of stuff.
$50 million, and they took away 157 victories. But they gave them back, unfortunately.
And they cut their scholarships in half.
Yeah, yeah.
But Greg Sankey is there for one basic reason: to make sure that they don't take away Tennessee on television. That's why he's there. He's not there lobbying for lower sanctions and saying, look at what good boys they were. He's not going to do that. He's there for one reason and one reason only. And that reason is to make sure that they don't give a television ban for 2 years. Remember what they did to Auburn in 93 and 94?
Yeah.
People had this wonderful T-shirt. It was one of the most clever T-shirts I've ever seen. Auburn football 93. I saw it on the radio.
Or the best team on radio. But I do think, and they gave Auburn a 2-year TV, a 1-year TV ban. So Terry Bowden said, let's take the TV ban in 93 and then in 94 we're back on TV versus taking, going backwards, being on TV the first year and no TV the second year. I'll tell you what, it's the NCAA, this may be their last stand. We'll see what they do on this one. But let's switch gears here. We're going to have Jake Wimberly come on the show. We're going to have a discussion with Jake Wimberly. He has done, and Ben, I sent you all those metrics he's got called Looking Through the Hourglass. Mm-hmm. And he breaks down, Franz, the national championship race, who he thinks are the best playoff teams, what teams have weaknesses here and there. So some good stuff. Before we get to him, I got to say this. I looked at the transfer portal for some of the schools out there. For example, Auburn, 20 players have gone into the portal, 17 since Freeze got there. And I know Landon King, tight end, hybrid, wide receiver, he was in the portal, he was out, he was in, he was out. Now he's at Utah. Jeffrey Imbaugh, the big defensive lineman's at Purdue. And other than that, they're at UAB. They're going to Troy. They're going to TJ Finley's going to Texas State. And I looked at Zach Calzada, Georgia kid out of, I think, Buford, Georgia. Starting quarterback for Texas A&M in 2021 when they beat Alabama. Transfers to Auburn, gets hurt, never gets on the field. You know where he'll be playing his football next year?
Western Walla Walla.
It's close. Incarnate Word. I mean, it's just so I think what you're seeing with the portal is, Ben, you know this, the coaches at the end of the year go, Franz, we put the depth chart together and we only go 4 deep and you're 7. You really ought to look at another school. Maybe you look at D2, D3, whatever. Again, I've been right about this. The portal is where players go in purgatory, the witness protection program. You're not seeing too many studs leave a big-time program and go into another one. I know Jermaine Burton went from Georgia to Alabama. There have been a few, Jamison Williams, but they weren't getting any touches at Ohio State. So I think the guys that you want to stay are staying. And I'm not being critical. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But, Ben, you can relate to this. I mean, you busted your ass and you kept fighting, kept doing everything you were supposed to do. And when they called your number, you played your first 3 years. You just didn't start. But when you were a starter, you'd already been playing, but they knew they could count on you. And I think the portal is proving me right. It's not the end of college sports, and people have got to quit being, oh, my God, waiting for the other shoe to drop, running around with their hair on fire, Ben. How about that?
Yeah, and the thing about it is too, it's like this. Listen, I had five grandparents growing up. I had a great grandmother, 2 grandmothers. My great grandmother, if I would have went to her and said, Grandma, Mom, stop procrastinating people, she would have smacked me in my face and said, I'll smack you because I don't know what procrastination means, and you shouldn't be using words that I don't understand. Procrastination goes out the window when you go to the portal. That's the truth right there. See, recruiting trail, I'm going to say whatever I got to say to get you to sign that national letter of intent. You go to the portal, I don't got to lie to you. This is where line stops. Hey, you can come to this school and you might start. Why? Because you didn't start at the school you left. Why would I guarantee you a starting spot on the school you're coming from? Because you told them you want to be with them. I said, well, at the end of the day, man, if a man messes up and this lady take him back, he know he gonna go through hell. Now she gonna take him back, but she gonna throw it in his face every chance she get. That's the portal. They gonna throw it in your face, right? They gonna be like, whoa. We pulled you out of that portal. I got a nephew that's in college right now. When he asked me, should he go to the portal, I said, I'm your uncle. I'm going to support you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but let me tell you something.
Yeah.
My grass is real green right now because it's getting ready to be the summertime soon. When the fall comes, it ain't as green no more. They chasing something that's not real. And for those people who, this is what it is. I blame Joe Burrow. Everybody think quarterback leaves, Ohio State goes to LSU, has an undefeated season. That's a myth. That's the exception, like you've never seen it in your life. So, hey, I'm just saying. I mean, Jamie Newman left Wake Forest and went to Georgia, never played, and you never saw him again.
That's right.
You told Georgia no, NFL told him no too. So I'm just telling you, I wish him the best. But Franz, see, listen, I got interviewed by people like Franz Beard in college. Franz can give me a little bit of truth, and I'm going to just tell him the truth right back. I ain't have to sugarcoat it. I ain't know what the hell I was saying, but I ain't going to say nothing crazy when they let me in that big room. Let Franz Beard be the ambassador over, and let him do a PSA saying, listen, you're not going to make it. That's it. God bless. What? You're not going to make it. Because if you go into the portal, that means you incarnate word. That's a school. That's a real place.
Yeah.
Hey,
So we're going to take a break here. We're going to come back. And y'all can stay on if I'll love it. Stay on as long as you can. Jake Wimberly's going to get on. We're going to talk with him. He's down there in Mississippi. Covers Ole Miss, Mississippi State, all things in Mississippi. But I think that's right. If you weren't starting at your school, why do you think you're going to start when you move? We need to start getting the data and talking about what's really happening in the portal. Right back after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Right, Ben Troupe had to drop off. I knew he'd been on with us for a long time this morning, just kind of rolling along. Franz Beard, GatorBetMedia.com, and now Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive down in Jackson, Mississippi. And Franz, I don't know if I sent you. It's great information Jake Wimberly has put out. It's called The Hourglass, and it's a lot of metrics looking at the 23 college football season, strengths and weaknesses of teams, who's the likely playoff teams, who are likely national championship contenders and all. But great stuff. And Jake, this college football world that we live in, the SEC, you say, well, we're bringing more people in. Oklahoma and Texas coming in. Interestingly, had Tyler McComas on from KREF out in Oak City, Norman, covers Oklahoma and Oklahoma State every day, 4 hours a day. Said the economic impact of, they said, when we play in the Big 12, we might get 200 fans come from West Virginia, but they don't follow like they do in the SEC. Said the economic impact, they went out and sent people to Chamber of Commerce in Norman to Fayetteville, Arkansas, Lexington, KY, and Tuscaloosa. Said typically on a home weekend at Oklahoma, it's about $11 million in Norman. In Tuscaloosa, it's about 3 times that. So big change coming for Oklahoma, for the rest of the SEC. Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Let's think about that. I'm going to ask you this. Y'all y'all are dominating Texas A&M. Okay, there are 2.8 million people in the state of Mississippi. In the state of Texas, there's 30 million that we know of. I hadn't checked the turnstiles here the last 20 minutes. But bottom line, Mississippi's not. I mean, they're dominating. They're winning consistently against A&M. What do you think's going to happen? And talk about how your matrix plays into it. It's all relative to your commitment, isn't it?
It's relative to your commitment, sure. And Mississippi State and Ole Miss has been able, like you said, they've had some really good success against Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M dinged the worst that Texas A&M dinged Mississippi State was back when Johnny Manziel was there. And then you get, of course, to Ole Miss. They've had their battles as well. But on paper, Texas A&M should win that ball game every year. And I think if you're Texas A&M, when you came into the league, you thought, okay, we're going to dominate the state of Mississippi every year. That's 2 wins, and then we're going to get this win, and that's win. That hasn't happened. It really should happen if we're being honest. I mean, talent for talent, if you just look at roster talent, Texas A&M has better roster talent than State and Ole Miss. But for whatever reason, that just hasn't panned out. I think some of the things you got to look at outside of Johnny Manziel, Mississippi State and Ole Miss have had better quarterback play over the last 10 years. I think when you look at it, the coaching, albeit it's been some different coaches from Dan Mullen at Mississippi State to Mike Leach. And, at Ole Miss, you go Hugh Freeze and then Lane Kiffin. I believe Matt Luke even dinged them. So, pound for pound, the state of Mississippi's had better quarterback play than Texas A&M. And then also when you look at it, their coaches have outperformed Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher, and I think that's where it's at.
Yeah. And you think about this, the SEC since 1962 has had 24 national champions. I think the Pac-12 has had 6, Big Ten 7, Big 8 has had 8, ACC 7, and Southwest Conference 3 with Texas, and Arkansas 1 in 64. So this isn't a new thing, SEC dominance, is it, at all? People seem to think it is, but it really isn't. And there have been 6 teams in that 60-year period, 60-plus years, 6 different teams from this conference that have won national championships. In the Big Ten, it's Michigan and Ohio State. In the Big 8, it was Nebraska or Oklahoma. In the Southwest Conference, it was Texas, and then that one time for Arkansas. So it's not only the best league, it's the most balanced. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the most balanced. And, I think when you look at it, though, I mean, you go back into, and you guys know this, you go back into the 70s and the 80s, the media coverage just wasn't there for the Southeastern Conference. Now, there was a lull when you get into the, late 80s to the 90s, when you had those Miami Hurricane teams coming through, Florida State was coming through, Nebraska was still up and running, where the Southeastern Conference was not what it is today. But then when you interject a lot of the SEC money, the SEC network money, the television money, when you go back to Roy Kramer, who really kind of set this whole thing off with the SEC championship game back in, 1992, 1993, that's when you started to see the thing pivot. Money doesn't buy you everything, but I think the SEC's vision of where they wanted the conference to be, bringing in Arkansas and South Carolina at the time, adding the championship game, then that manifesting itself into the SEC network. I think that's where you saw the change, and the SEC was ahead of everybody else on that. And then of course that correlated to better coaches, that correlated to better talent, and then of course here we are today.
Yeah, Franz, jump in here.
Well, he's absolutely correct, and Roy Kramer does not get enough credit. Now, I thought Roy. Let's face it, Roy Kramer always had to look like he hadn't taken a dump in 17 years on his face. But the guy, the guy did have vision, and he brought in division football, which helped a lot. All of a sudden you had a West Division, an East Division. Now you can have a conference championship game, and people don't realize what happened. When Antonio Langham intercepted Shane Matthews and ran that back, and then Alabama goes on and beats the invincible U, EWE, the U, and then Alabama beats them in the national championship game. All of a sudden people said, wait a second here. Alabama almost got beaten by a Florida team that lost 4 ball games.
Yep.
And yet they went up there and destroyed the U in the biggest game of the year. And that, that was the perfect storm that manifested itself. And, Jake was absolutely right about the quarterback play. Ole Miss has had it. Mississippi State has had it. They haven't had it at Texas A&M, with the exception of Johnny Manziel that one year. His second year, let's face it, Johnny Manziel was so full of himself that he cost them ball games the second year. But in that first year that he was there, he was unbelievably good. So, but that's what set the SEC apart for years anyway, is we've always had the best quarterbacks. Yeah. Always. And that's top to bottom. I mean, goodness, you look at guys who leave this league and go someplace else, and they typically do pretty well.
Yeah. Jake, I'd like to see the numbers. Are you going to put some numbers together on the portal? I talked about it a minute ago. Just an example, Auburn, 20 guys in the portal, 17 since Freeze got there. And you've had one go to Utah, one to Purdue, a bunch to UAB and Troy, TJ Finley's to Texas State. It's not like the big guys are going from their, a big-time school to another big-time school. There are exceptions. And like Ben Troupe said, Joe Burrow kind of messed up that matrix, didn't he? But I'd love to know the data that you're compiling, being an engineer since October 15th of 2018 with the portal.
Yeah, we're coming through a lot of that stuff. I'm actually in conversations, do a lot of that talk with On3's doing a really good job of that as well. And I'll get you some information on that. But one of the things you see is, you hope if you're a football team, it goes 1-to-1. And what I mean by that is this: you have a guy move out, you bring a guy in, so you replace that guy. And we don't have enough years under our belt to know if that's exactly true. For instance, if you lose 15 guys, do you replace them with 15 equal guys, or 15 better guys, or 15 worse guys? Now, what we do know is typically once you start seeing guys hit the portal multiple times, it never goes up. It always goes down. You referenced TJ Finley. Signed with LSU, high-profile quarterback. He was able to make a lateral move over to Auburn. That didn't work out either. Now it takes a step down to Texas State or wherever he's going. One of the biggest, kind of case studies of this is, I think it's Mitch. No, I'm going back in my head. It was a quarterback that was on that Netflix original he went to University of Miami, and his name escapes me. Tate Martell, maybe yeah. It was Tate Martell. Anyway, he was on like his 5th transfer, and typically it always goes down, because coaches just aren't going to touch a kid that starts transferring once, twice. You look at JT Daniels. I mean, he started at USC, went to Georgia, went to West Virginia. Now I think he's off to somewhere else. But yes, that's definitely something that we're looking at. And it's just going to take a couple more years to quantify.
JC Daniels is at Rice-A-Roni now.
He's at Rice?
Rice-A-Roni, yes.
Wow. Well, I mean, and Jake, that is some really cool data to look at. Again, we're 4.5 years into the portal, but I see this. It's just guys used to be cut. I mean, they had a depth chart at the end of the year. The coaches would say, hey, you're 3rd or 4th. And, you kind of just use your head on that one. If you're 4th team and you've been there 3 years, and you want to play, maybe you drop down. But that's what they used to do. They'd go to a smaller school. These kids nowadays, and there's a perception out there that they're transferring from Florida to Ole Miss or Alabama to LSU and Clemson to Florida State, and there's no drop-off or whatever. There are reasons why people leave, Jake. I mean, sometimes it's not a right fit. I get, but that's always been about 5 or 10% of your players, hadn't it? But this number now, I think Jake, you've done as good a job as I've ever seen of pointing out what's really happening in the portal and the quarterback play. Jake, let's talk about it. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. They've got 2 stud quarterbacks coming back this year. But Will Rogers, he broke a record that was held by Aaron Murray 24 games quicker than Aaron Murray did it. What was that for? Touchdown passes, or was it for?
I think it was for completions.
Completions. Okay. Yeah. All right. Why is Will Rogers not in the mix for the Heisman? You've broadcast all of his games since he played high school.
Yeah, and before we do that, back to the portal, just some quick numbers, what we know right now. Right around 2,700 guys have jumped in the portal this year in football. And you're looking at somewhere around 1,350 guys have found homes. That's 50% of the field. And this is something we don't ever talk about. That's 50%. We're middle of May. 50% of the field is still out there. And, some of those guys will find homes, but a lot of these guys will never get tracked because they'll either not play or they'll end up in an FCS school. And look, I always say anytime you get a paid education, it's great no matter where it is. Yeah. But if you've got a home at Texas or Oklahoma or State or Ole Miss or Alabama, it may do you some good just to sit. Now, some of these coaches are pushing these kids into the portal. We know that. They're making roster moves. They're like you said, they're doing things. But anyway, that's just a quick number. Only 50% of the field has homelessness today. In regards to Will Rogers, I think it comes back to a couple things. One, he's playing at a school at Mississippi State where, they're going to win 6, 7, 8 ball games, 9 on a good year. They won 9 last year with a bowl game. 2, he's a Mike Leach quarterback, and rest in peace to Mike, but he's a Mike Leach quarterback. So people are going to look at it and say, hey, by default, he's been throwing the ball 50, 60 times a ball game. Those stats are skewed just based on, the volume of passes that he's doing. Will's a very, very good quarterback. And for him to be in that Heisman conversation this year, he's going to have to show it in a different offense. And I think he will. But then Mississippi State's going to have to win double-digit ball games, and I don't know that can happen. So, he's definitely a guy that's probably going to get a shot at the next level. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, and I think one of the best in the country. I have him as my 11th or 12th best overall quarterback in the country this year. But there is this quarterback crop this year is extremely strong, and it's extremely strong out west. So, all that to say to kind of button that up is he's a really good quarterback. I think he'll play at the next level to some degree. It's just he's going to have to put up some remarkable numbers, and they're going to have to win a lot of games this year. Yeah.
And we got about 5 minutes left. Great stuff. And I thought that figure was about 45 or 50% of these guys going in the portal. They're orphans. It's kind of the orphan portal because why do people want to pick up guys that have already quit? And especially once you're a serial quitter, you're toxic, man. I mean, Franz, you know that. Jake, you know that. In employment, why you've had 6 jobs in 4 years. It's like why a lot of people are consultants because they can't get along with other people. That's kind of what the portal is. And, I'm getting some stuff from people going, this is true. I think Mac Browne talked about 4,000 last year in the portal. Jake, real quick, so we don't lose this and Franz, Gator, check him out Monday through Thursdays on the Buddy Martin Show, Facebook and Twitter, 9 p.m. Eastern. Jake, let people know how they can follow you and keep up with all this great research that you're doing. Folks, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and go out and help people every day and listen to these guests that we have because they're very smart people. They went to college.
Many colleges.
Yeah, but Jake, let people know how.
Yeah,
how
you
they
can just find me on Twitter at Jake Wim. You can.
Oh, froze up there for a second. You back with us, Jake? Okay.
Let me throw one quick thing in here while we're waiting on Jake to get back.
Jake, Jake, did you come back here? We lost you there for a second. Jake, go ahead. Go ahead and give your tag out before we let you go. Can you hear us?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Jake Wim. And then, of course, just find the show. You can just go to thezone1059.com, 3 to 6 every day, Monday through Friday. Okay.
And the data that you're putting out, you've put out 2 series pieces so far. What's the next piece?
All right. So if you got, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi was breaking up on me. We put out stuff on the national championship game. We've got the tiers out there. We've got SEC stuff out there. This week coming up, we'll get more stuff on conferences, likely, the Big Ten and the ACC. And then we'll start putting out team by team projections probably next week.
Okay. Franz, I will get you that data today so you can study that. It is solid gold, but you had one thing to say. We got about a minute left.
Don't sit on Graham Mertz. The guy's got 32 starts. There's only 6 quarterbacks in all of Division I with more starts than he does. And believe me, he's going to be better. He may not be the world beater that some people would like him to be, but he's going to be better than what a lot of people are projecting him to be. He needed a new – this is a guy where the transfer, I think, is going to work out because you're talking about a guy that needed desperately a change of scenery. So not everybody makes the portal changes for the right reason. And I think Jake was alluding to that, and that's perfectly. And we tend to forget one other thing. Kids get cut. Why? Because you're recruiting well below you, and you got guys that are coming. You haven't played in 3 years, and this guy coming in has the potential to play immediately or within the second year. So that's why, we tend to forget. They say, boy, they lost 20. Yeah, but they signed 28 studs. Okay.
That's right. That is a good point. Hey, I don't think there's been a more clear presentation by you, Jake, and you, Franz, of how this portal is really working. And I think people need to calm down. College football, the product on the field is as good as it's ever been. Start following the numbers and listen to Franz Beard, listen to Jake Wimberly. I'll do my part. Hey, man, great show. Sidelines here with you. Unbelievable. Start looking at the numbers. They tell everything. Have a great day, everybody. We are out of here.